Let me make that near and dear to you that you like to be able to. Anyway, my mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember. Lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I headed? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I? No idea. I don't think as the idea that the political coverage. I want to thank and recognize Dr. John Kingersong. Good song. I can't get this to function at all. My mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember. Lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I headed? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I? No idea. No idea. No idea. No idea. What's the song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody, going to my mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I headed? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I? No idea. Last night on the television, I was on a telephone rapidly rising with I don't know. COVID has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's why it's reflected in the NHEI. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him in. We're going to seize the ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy. Yeah. NATO's purpose is to defend against aggression. Let me make that near and dear to you that you like to be able to. Anyway, my mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember. Lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I headed? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I? No idea. I don't think as the idea that the political coverage. I want to thank and recognize Dr. John Kingersong. Good song. I can't get this to function at all. My mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember.
All right. Thank you guys for joining in. We got a good show this week. We got a lot to talk about. We are 1 week away from the 2022 midterm elections. And it's going to be quite an interesting night, I believe. Unfortunately, some states like Pennsylvania and here in California where, we might have the third largest GDP in the country, but it takes us 30 days to count our votes. So hopefully, we're going to know most of the results on election night. And I am willing to bet that it is going to be a very bad night for Democrats. You've seen the media polls. Listen, I'm going to say this about those polls. I don't believe that it was ever really tilting back towards the Democrats. It might have slightly, but not in the manner some of the polls suggested. I think what you're now seeing is that these people are trying to save face so they don't look completely stupid when the actual results come in, and it is a bloodbath for Democrats across the board, even in blue states. And it's going to be an exciting time. So we got some stuff to talk about tonight. That's going to be one of them. What's going to happen? I'll give you some of my predictions. We're also going to talk about a race in particular in Arizona, Kari Lake. She is set to win, and she is set to win bigly. And her victory should be We must make it the final nail in the coffin for the establishment's myth of electability. Her win will change everything. It's got to send a message to Republican voters and throughout the Republican Party. We're going to talk about that. But the first story I want to talk about kind of broke, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, has to do with the Department of Homeland Security and the DHS leaks. So we're going to talk about Big Brother watching us because this story is wild. And I think that because we don't have an honest press in this country, and because we now know from this story that the press is working with the regime, not many people have read it, have probably heard of it, have seen it. Thank goodness Elon Musk has bought Twitter because now at least we can share it there. But people need to know about this. We've been hearing now since Joe Biden took office, fascism. The Republicans, the MAGA Republicans are the threat to democracy. Well, I don't know. If you read this story, it was originally broken by The Intercept. They have years of DHS emails and internal documents. Also, they've got information from lawsuits, one filed by Eric Schmidt, who is going to be the future senator from Missouri. He's currently the attorney general. He has a lawsuit, so some of the information came from him. But it is wild stuff. Big Brother is watching you. The Department of Homeland Security has run amok. CISA, which is under the Department of Homeland Security, has run amok. And we need to wake up. We all cheered. As we know, I believe it was earlier this year, Joe Biden tried to announce his Disinformation Governance Board. So I'm going to go through some of the parts of this story and talk to you about this. So bear with me a little bit because it's a long story. It's like 10 pages printed out. But there are some fascinating details in here, things that people need to know. So we all remember that Joe Biden tried to create what he dubbed the Disinformation Governance Board. And this board was supposed to police misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. So according to them, misinformation is false information spread unintentionally. Disinformation is defined as false information spread intentionally. And malinformation is factual information shared out of context with harmful intent. So that's what this Disinformation Governance Board was supposed to police. And there was wide-ranging uproar when this came out. I mean, we live in the United States of America, freedom of speech, right? I may not agree with what you have to say, but I'm going to fight like heck for your right to say it. And who decides what is and what isn't misinformation? I think we've seen a lot of the things we were told was misinformation over the last 3 years, ended up being, actually go all the way back to 2016. I mean, the biggest disinformation story of, I would say, the last 20 years was the Russia hoax that the media peddled as concrete fact. They seem to have forgotten, but they spent 4 years peddling the Russia hoax. Some of them are still peddling the Russia hoax. And so if you had come out and said that it was a lie, you would have been told you were spreading misinformation. So who gets to decide what is and what isn't misinformation? That should be up to the individual. That's part of that's part of policing ourselves. We have the ability to decide whether we think something is credible or not. And you do that by being granted access to both sides of an argument. What we have now is a government that has decided that they're going to decide what is misinformation, what is disinformation, and what is malinformation, and they are going to stop it from being spread. The problem is they're not deciding it based on true facts and based on genuine goodness. They're deciding it based on political ideology, and agendas. So basically right now, anything that kind of goes against the Biden regime is deemed misinformation. Anything that helped Trump was deemed misinformation, right? When Trump said that the virus probably was man-made out of a Wuhan lab, they told you That was misinformation. There was no proof. We could go all on Twitter all day, check all the blue check marks you want. They all said that was a lie. When Trump told you the vaccine was coming, Chris Wallace said during a debate, no, it's not. The government told you when Hunter Biden laptop story was broken by the New York Post a week and a half before the election with extremely important information that the American people deserve to know. You had ex-CIA intelligence FBI agents sign a letter to the country saying that it was Russian disinformation and they knew they were lying, but they told you it was misinformation. Twitter took it down. Facebook banned it. So when Biden announced his disinformation board, even some on the left were uncomfortable with this. Even people at Politico. I want to read you a quote in this story from one of the top people at Politico. When Biden announced it, he brought up a good point. All right, Jack Schaefer, who is a media critic from Politico, said, "Who among us thinks the government should add to its work list the job of determining what is true and what is disinformation? And who thinks the government is capable of telling the truth? Our government produces lies and disinformation at industrial scale and always has. It overclassifies vital information to block its own citizens from becoming any the wiser. It pays thousands of press aides to play hide the salami with the facts." And I want to give bravo to Jack when he wrote that, okay? Because Jack understands something. Right now, the left is cheering this, right? This disinformation, fighting the fascists, preserving democracy, not even realizing that doing this is fascist, right? The government controlling the spread of information and telling its citizens what to think is totalitarianism. It is fascism. But Jack understands that eventually the shoe is on the other foot. When the other side takes power, they are going to wield this type of power and use it against the left. So Jack understood the threat. And he clearly knows history. Our government has lied and lied and lied over and over again throughout our history to achieve its ends. Much of the time when they're deciding what is and what isn't misinformation, it's because it's either a threat to their agenda or it's going to help their agenda. Let's go back, Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin, right? They told us that the North Vietnamese fired on a U.S. ship in the Gulf of Tonkin. It kickstarted U.S. involvement into the war. That story, we have pretty good suspicions, was a lie. The USS Maine, the Spanish-American War. We were told that the Cubans, the Spanish, blew up the USS Maine in the Cuban harbor, sank the ship. It started the Spanish-American War. We now know that was likely a lie. It was a lie. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, right? Our government told us they had proof of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, kickstarted the war on terror. That was a lie. Donald Trump was a Russian spy and asset. Our government, many in our government told you that was true. Adam Schiff says he has proof. Said he had proof for 4 years. Where's the proof, Adam? He told you it was true. They knew it was bullcrap. The FBI knew it was a lie, and they still peddled it. Hunter Biden's laptop, they told you that was Russian disinformation. They knew that was a lie. And so we know the real threat here is this is fascism. People need to be given the benefit of the doubt. One of the things, as a former teacher that I try to do when you're a history teacher and when you're teaching kids how to critically think, it's important that you have to show kids that they have to look at both sides of the argument, get all of the information, and then make an informed decision. But when you want somebody to get to the conclusion you hide from them all the information, kind of like what they're doing right now with the COVID vaccine, right? They are hiding information. They know there is a serious problem. We talked about it last week, a serious problem with this vaccine, especially on young, adolescent, teenage, 30-year-old males, serious myocarditis side effects. But they are hiding that information. because they want to shield Big Pharma from responsibility. So they want you to pay out of your pocket instead of having the big pharmaceutical companies pay. And they want to keep pushing this vaccine because they're getting donations from the pharmaceutical companies. So they're doing their bidding and they're hiding it. But they're telling you, go back 6 months ago, if you said something against the vaccine, you would have gotten banned from Twitter. They would have said that that was misinformation. So what is misinformation yesterday turns out to be truth down the road. So people are going to be under this policy. There's the real threat that people are going to be punished, silenced, and targeted based on what the government tells you in misinformation. And then we might later find out, so they're going to get disciplined, punished, whatever. And then down the road, you're going to find out it was all BS and a lie and that person was actually correct. But that doesn't correct the wrong here. And a little tidbit. So the Department of Homeland Security was started. This is the problem, what's going on. I'm glad some of our troops have come home, that we're not wasting more time in the Middle East. The Department of Homeland Security was founded after 9/11 to help with the war on terror. But now that the war on terror is over or winding down, basically they got a bunch of guys over there sitting on their hands with nothing to do. And this is always the threat when you give the government power. When you give the government power like this, like the Patriot Act, like all of these things, you might have done it. Obviously, listen, I still remember September 11th like it was yesterday. I was in 7th grade. I can tell you who I was sitting next to. I can tell you some of the conversations. It was a pivotal point in this nation's history. Many of us saw that, and we wanted these things done, right? It was a different world back then. We thought, hey, if we give the government this power, we're protecting. We don't want to see our friends and our family members killed like that. So even things with the best intentions have bad results. We gave the government these powers, and now that the war on terror is over, they're not going to give up these powers. No, they got all these people working at the government with nothing else to do. They've decided that the Department of Homeland Security now says, here's a quote from Laura Demlow from the story. She's an FBI official. She warned the threat of subversive information on social media could undermine support for the U.S. government. And we know from these leaked memos in the story that the DHS now plans to target inaccurate information regarding the origins of COVID, which we now know the official story was a lie. It's most likely come from the Wuhan lab, which is what Trump said 2 years ago. The efficacy of COVID vaccines, we know the efficacy of COVID vaccines isn't looking too good. Racial justice, the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. So Joe Biden had a disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan, and now he needs to cover it up and say they did a good job. And the nature of U.S. support to Ukraine. So, of course, the threat of subversive information could undermine support for the U.S. government. Yeah, that's what happens when the citizens find out the government's lying. They get mad. They say enough's enough, and they stop listening. So this is what the real threat is. The government just doesn't want people to find out that they're being lied to, because if the people find out they're being lied to, they get angry. Right? Look what's happening in Brazil right now. They're rioting. They don't believe the results of their election. And I think they have a good reason not to. So this story goes on. There's some gems in here. So we know that they're working directly with Facebook, Instagram. There's actually a portal. Let me show you the picture here. This is the content request system. So the government goes in to submits, they find something on the internet account that they decide is spreading misinformation, and they have this content request system. So you have to have a law enforcement or government email to use it. You go onto this system. You say this person is spreading misinformation and we want it taken down. And now they're justifying this by saying, well, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, they could review it and decide they don't want to do it. Bullcrap. Do you really think these companies are going to say no to the federal government when they say you got to have this account taken down? Absolutely not, especially not the type of employees that we saw working at Twitter. They did everything the government told them to do. They took down the New York Post story. So, And guess what this all began? Guess where the DHS, this is the worst part about this. The DHS's mission to fight disinformation stemming from concerns around Russian influence in the 2016 presidential election. All of this nonsense, all of this power is because of the lie created by Hillary Clinton, her campaign, because Hillary Clinton to this day cannot accept that she lost the 2016 election because she is a terrible person and nobody likes her. And she cannot accept that. So she came up with this lie tying Trump to Russia. The FBI, the CIA knew, Robert Mueller, when he started investigation, knew from day one it was all a lie. But that didn't stop them from using that lie as a weapon. From using that lie to give the government and the Department of Homeland Security more power to police what they called misinformation, to meet, basically this is the needs of the deep, to meet the means of the deep state and the bureaucracy. They spent 4 years undermining a sitting president. And here's a real gem from this report. So in the DHS's quadrennial Homeland Security Review, they say a lot of this, the challenge is particularly acute in marginalized communities, which are often the targets of false or misleading information, such as false information on voting procedures targeting people of color. You know what they're saying right here? Minorities are too stupid to figure out when they're being lied to. So we as the government are going to tell them what's the truth and what isn't. That's what they're saying. So the Democratic Party, which is not the party of racism, right? Even though they are, thinks that minorities, poor people, the peasants are too stupid to look at information, to think critically and determine on their own what is truth and what is fiction. So the government has to do it for you. And here's the biggest problem. What is disinformation isn't clearly articulated. And the DHS basically just gets to decide arbitrarily what is misinformation. And the DHS justifies this whole thing by claiming that terrorist threats can be exacerbated by misinformation and disinformation spread online. And in the last year, according to this story, they specifically started to target what they're calling domestic extremism, which is what we know as MAGA Republicans, because that's what Joe Biden said in his little speech. So if you don't think that this whole program now is targeting MAGA extremist Republicans, you're out of your mind. So CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency Act, which was signed in 2018, thanks to the Russia hoax and the hacking of U.S. elections, Trump actually signed this. And CISA then evolved into a mission to monitor social media discussions by routing disinformation concern to private sector platforms. I want to show you, I'm trying to find the one part here. Now, in January 2021, CISA replaced the Countering Foreign Influence Task Force with the new MDM, which is Misinformation, Disinformation, and Malinformation Team. And according to CISA, they are responsible with countering all types of disinformation to be responsive to current events. So basically, anything they decide, current events. And so CISA, which was originally the Cybersecurity Infrastructure, let me go back. Sorry, I want to get it right. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So CISA, which was designed to deal with infrastructure, says CISA's domain now has gradually expanded to encompass more subjects it believes amount to critical infrastructure. There's that word, infrastructure. And if we learned anything from the Biden regime, is that basically anything is considered infrastructure now. They passed their Infrastructure Act, their $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that had nothing to do with infrastructure. They came up with ridiculous terms for like human infrastructure. Basically anything is now deemed infrastructure. So what CISA is doing is saying, well, that's infrastructure right there. That is security infrastructure that we have domain over and we have to deal with. So this story, I suggest you read it. It's published on The Intercept. It should be one of the biggest stories that's broken in the last, I don't even remember since when. I mean, but we have to step up. Enough is enough. And quite frankly, I am astonished by the number of Republicans who have not even touched the story, talked about it, tweeted about it, posted about it. The Republicans are set to win a historic victory next week. We're going to move into that. But our leaders, what are they going to do to protect us from this? Have they said anything? Has Kevin McCarthy talked about this? Has Mitch McConnell talked about this? They don't talk about it. What are they going to do to stop this? Is it because they want to wield this power? I don't believe either side should be wielding a power like this. I don't care who's in charge. I don't care if my side's in power or my side's not in power. No, the government does not have the right to determine what is and what people can and cannot read, what people can and cannot say. There's always been people that believe things that aren't true. That's their right. This is the United States of America. Like I said, I don't have to agree with what you have to say, but I believe you should be able to say it. And it shouldn't be up to the government to deny people both sides of an argument, only give them one side, and then tell them that one side is truth, because we know that our government is capable of terrible lies. They've done it in the past. They're doing it right now with the COVID vaccine, and it has to stop because this is only going to get worse and worse. The Department of Homeland Security is out of control. And quite frankly, maybe if they don't have anything to do because the war on terror is over, maybe we don't need the Department of Homeland Security anymore. The country existed for over 200 years without the Department of Homeland Security. Yes, September 11th happened, but it hasn't happened again since then. Maybe we don't need the Department of Homeland Security anymore. Maybe we've gotten through that period. The DHS has run its course, and now its duties can be broken up back the way they used to be, now that we've learned and made adjustments. Because if they're going to use their power now to target American citizens, that's unacceptable. So the next thing, as we branch in, is the red wave coming up. I think we all, if you're paying attention and you're like me, I mean, obviously if you're sitting here listening to me, you are probably big into politics. And what we are on the horizon in a week's time now, it'll be next Tuesday, of what's going to be a wipeout for Democrats. And they've earned it. They're going to tell you it's because of misinformation on the internet, right? They're already planting the seeds. They're going to try and play that game. No. The Democrats are going to get wiped out in 1 week because of what they've done and what they haven't done. Because they're a complete and total disaster. Americans are rejecting their woke policies, their out-of-touch way of governing. Inflation's running out of control. They're not doing anything. They're worried about January 6th. They're worried about taking out President Trump, preventing him from running again. Meanwhile, the American people are getting shafted from here until Sunday. There's threats of nuclear war breaking out. That's why they're going to lose. They earned the loss. They earned the butt kicking. But what's going to come next? And let's look. So today, the Real Clear Politics Senate shifted. They're now projecting a 54-seat GOP win, with now New Hampshire going to Bolduc. We're going to talk a little bit about Bolduc when I get into the Kerry Lake part. So that's probably what I see. I think Republicans could have done better in some other states, but the map's they're kind of reaching their peak in this cycle. I mean, you could say maybe Colorado. I mean, Joe O'Dea is a disaster. When you spit in the face of your base, that's what happens, Joe. Maybe in Connecticut, it could have been a little more competitive. You don't know. I'm interested to see how the results in Connecticut shape out. But that's probably the max where the GOP was going to get this cycle. That is a big win. In the House, I think we're staring at probably 230-plus seats. I think for sure I'm going to say the bottom is probably 230, and every day we're inching closer to the 240, 245 mark. So Republicans are going to win. They are going to get a mandate. But what comes next is the big question. What are Republicans going to do with that power? And Rich Barris, who you know, me and Rich are close, he posted a quote today from a suburban. There was a story out, and one of the women said, she said, I was a Democratic voter. And she goes on to say, well, I would want to support the right for a woman to choose. So she's basically saying, I do support abortion. I think women should have the right to abortion. But everything else is crazy. Then she goes on to say, I also want to support our economy getting better because it's not right now. This is a white suburban woman. Adding later, give the Republicans a chance in Congress, see what they can do. So what comes next? So the American people are going to give Republicans a chance at power. So this quote is exciting, but is also a serious warning to the GOP. The American people expect you to do something with the power they give you. And if you don't, like I've been warning, like Rich Barris has been warning, if Republicans get this win, are given this mandate by the American people, and they squander it like they normally do, like they did after 2016, where they stopped Trump's agenda. They had full control after the 2016 election, and they stopped the wall. They stopped the repeal of Obamacare. That was Republicans who did that. And for their betrayal of Trump, they were kicked out in a landslide in 2018. So if Republicans take power this time around and don't provide the type of change that the American people expect, they're going to be kicked on their butts, and this might be their last chance at power because they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt anymore. Because the media, the government, the powers of the bureaucracy are swinging against the Republican Party. The Democrats are trying to create a one-party state. And here you have the Republican Party being given a chance to break through and prove to the American people they are the party of the people. If they don't take it, then they're looking at extinction. We are looking at a one-party state. We are looking at a state where Big Brother is going to decide what is and what isn't, what you can and cannot say, what you can and cannot think, who can and cannot post things on the internet. That's the danger here. So the American people are not giving Republicans the power to preserve the status quo or to hold hearings like the Democrats are doing. No, that's not what they're saying. They want real action. They want Merrick Garland held accountable for wielding the Justice Department like his own personal Gestapo. They want Secretary Mayorkas impeached for his neglect at the border. All right? The invasion that's happening at the southern border. They're electing Republicans to do these things. If we do not govern boldly, we will lose America forever. I have said it over again. We may not get many more chances of power. So what comes next is the GOP must govern ferociously. They must attack Biden. They must dish it back to the Democrats just as hard as the Democrats dish it out. Otherwise, we're going to be kicked out again. And we might not get many more chances. And to highlight all of this is a rock star in Arizona. What I wanted to show you is Kari Lake. Kari Lake is probably, in my opinion, her win is going to be one of the most important victories next week in the country. I think one of the latest polls I'll show you here. There was a poll that just came out by the Phillips Academy. She's opened up an 11-point lead in Arizona. Let's not forget that Joe Biden won the state of Arizona in the 2020 election. And establishment GOPers, Democrats, media talking heads, political pundits were saying Arizona's gone for the Republicans forever. It's gone. It's moving left. This is the beginning. It is now going to be a solidly Democratic state. Then the GOP establishment told you because of this, you cannot nominate a woman like Kari Lake. If you Republican voters pick Kari Lake in the primary, you are going to cause the GOP to lose. That's what the establishment told you. They hammered it home. Meghan McCain, Mitt Romney, Mitch McConnell, Ronna McDaniel, none of them wanted Kari Lake. Mike Pence went against her. They told you if you nominate Kari Lake, she is going to lose in a landslide because MAGA cannot win in Arizona because Arizona is moving to the left. It's more and more Latino, getting older. People are coming in from California. MAGA can't win in a state like Arizona. They told you if you nominate Don Bolduc in New Hampshire, because he was associated with Donald Trump, he's been endorsed by Donald Trump, that state is gone, right? So much so that when Bolduc won the primary in New Hampshire, Mitch McConnell pulled funding from New Hampshire. Now, today, San Anselm College shows Don Bolduc with a 48%, 47% lead, up by 1% in New Hampshire. A guy who ran as a MAGA Trump Republican. But Kari Lake has never veered. Bolduc distanced himself a little from Trump. Kari Lake has never distanced herself from Trump. She has run a full-blown MAGA campaign in a state they told you was gone for Republicans. The establishment's narrative, when she wins next week, her victory changes everything. Because everything they told you about MAGA and the future of the Republican Party is a lie. The establishment's narrative will be dead and buried forever. The myth of electability that these GOP consultants, that these GOP establishment party leaders like Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, Ronna McDaniel, that myth of electability that they talk about when picking candidates is dead. Is dead. It's gone. How could somebody like Kari Lake be opening up an 11-point lead in a state you told us would never vote again for a Republican if it was a MAGA Republican? How could she be doing that if you were right? And Republican voters need to realize this. And Republican candidates around the country need to realize this lesson. Stop listening to your consultants that tell you run away from MAGA, run away from America first, and you'll win. Because quite frankly, who are the only candidates that are not surging right now? Let's see. Let me show you a file here. Let me get it. Do I have it on here? Well, Joe O'Dea, he's down by close to 10 points in Colorado, and he ran an establishment campaign. You had Mitch McConnell stumping for him there. You had all the establishment cronies pumping money into the Colorado Senate race. This guy ran the most rhino campaign ever. He came out against Donald Trump, said he was going to actively campaign against Donald Trump in 2024, and guess what? He is going to lose, and he is going to lose in impressive fashion. What other candidates haven't flourished? Bob Stefanowski in Connecticut. He ran as Blue Collar Bob in 2018, nearly won, nearly pulled off the upset. He wasn't even the endorsed candidate in the primary by the state party. He beat their endorsed establishment candidate, ran as Blue Collar Bob, very nearly won. This time he listened to his GOP establishment consultants and has run a bland rhino campaign, typical Northeastern Republican campaign, and he's down 10 points in a lot of polls, 5 to 10 points. I think that race will end up a little closer. But so the candidates who ran on the establishment message, on the Bushism, on the Romneyism, on the old Republican Party, Reagan Republicans, they're the ones who are floundering while the MAGA Republicans are flourishing in the states where they said that was impossible. States like Arizona, where they said it was gone for the Republicans. Pennsylvania, where Mehmet Oz is going to win. And I think Doug Mastriano, I don't know if he's going to win, but I'm going to tell you that race is going to be within 2 points. New Hampshire, MAGA's winning. Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. States they said you had to give up. You had to go back to being crony establishment Republicans because that's the way. Nope. Guess what? Tudor Dixon's going to win. Gretchen Whitmer's going down. All right? Tony Evers is going down. So this is going to change it all. And I hope Republican voters, what we have to understand, it's time for America First MAGA Republicans to get smart and play the long game. It's time to get rid of rhinos. The way to do that is you no longer have to accept the trash that the GOP establishment tells you need to vote for to win because they are the electable one. Bullcrap. They don't know what's up. These are consultants who have records of losing, decades of losing. Look at California. The same consultants control everything. They haven't won a statewide race in over a decade. They haven't won anything, but they tell you they know how to win, and this person is not electable. Well, looking at the results, the candidates you're picking aren't electable. So what we have to do as voters is reject them outright. And sometimes, because the establishment's always going to have more money. And Rich Barris has made an excellent talk about this. What he has said and told people is that sometimes the long play is better to let the rhino lose in the general, especially in a House race. Maybe not in a Senate race. A Senate's tougher because you have 6 years. Incumbents build a lot of goodwill. They get a huge war chest. But you can beat a one-term Democrat incumbent, especially in a tilt R to an R seat. You don't have to elect the rhino because once you get the rhino in, he's there for decades. But if the Democrat wins in 2 years, you take him out with an America First candidate, a true America First Republican. And that's how we take over the party. You get rid of the rhinos. Once you start showing the GOP establishment that you're not going to settle for their trash, for their garbage candidates, they're going to have to stop putting them forward because they're not going to want to keep losing. But right now, they know and they think, well, people will be mad, but they're going to vote for our guy in the end. So they're counting on you to cave and to give in and to end up voting and electing their trash. And then that keeps their trash in power for decades. We have to play smarter. We're going to have a big majority here to work with after next Tuesday, starting in January. And now it's time to get smart and to show the establishment that we are just as clever, if not more so, than they are. Keep putting your trash forward. We won't vote for it, and you will lose. Then we'll come back with our candidate the next time, and we're going to kick your butt. So this victory by Kari Lake is going to be one of the most exciting. She's a rock star. I think her future, the sky's the limit for her. I think anybody who knows that, I think she's the real deal. She wins by 10 plus points. She needs to shove it in everybody's face. She should call Meghan McCain on that night and say, how do you like me now? Right? All these people that spend millions to stop her. J.D. Vance is going to win in Ohio. Ohio's trending Republican. So we're looking at a great, next Tuesday night's going to be a great night. And I probably won't do the show next Tuesday night because everybody's going to be watching the election results. So I'm sure you guys will be more consumed with that. So before we go, and I don't know if anyone's got any questions, but I want to talk to you a little bit. I always pick now, we have the news segment at the end here. The biggest L is what I call it. So the week's biggest L. So I spend a lot of time on social media. If you follow me, you know that. And I kind of like to try and find these ridiculous posts. And I say, each week I want to pick one out that I believe constitutes the biggest loss of the week, right? The biggest L. And this week's honor is going to Emily Oster. Professor Emily Oster wrote a piece in The Atlantic because now, remember, misinformation, right? All those mask Nazis, those vaccine Nazis, right? Get vaccinated, you won't spread COVID. It's time to hammer down on the unvaccinated, right? Our good old Jenny Rubin said that. I made a post about that today. She had her post, enough's enough. It's time we hammer the unvaccinated. They would have put us, they wanted to put you people in camps if they could, if you didn't want to get vaccinated. They fired first responders, nurses, doctors, police officers. They dismissed people from the military for not getting vaccinated. They called you grandma killers. And now Emily, because now she knows it was all BS because she apparently can't figure out what is when she's being fed misinformation, right? So she toed the government line, which lied to her. She fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Told people like me, you're not allowed to bury it. My uncle died during COVID. We weren't allowed to have a funeral. Millions around the country lost relatives. People died alone. We're not allowed proper funerals, all because of these people. And now what these people are saying, let's have an amnesty. Oh, let's bygones be bygones. Oh, we didn't know. We were all in the dark. Anybody who was in the dark about COVID for more than 2 weeks, we'll say, was living in La La Land. These are the people that are still driving around with their masks alone in their cars. And now they destroyed your businesses. They let your family members die alone. They would have put you in camps for not getting vaccinated if they could have gotten away with it. They closed your schools. They denied your children 2 years in some states of education. And they want you just to forget about it because now they know they were fed a bunch of BS. They were fed misinformation by their own government, and they fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Because they apparently can't think for themselves, because they're robots, and because they work for the regime. But now that they know they're going to get their butts kicked in a week, they want you to forget about, let's let bygones be bygones. Well, Emily, you don't seem to let bygones be bygones, right? I bet Emily still thinks that Donald Trump is a Russian asset. So no, she's our biggest L of the week. We are never going to forget what they did, because if we forget what they did, they will do it again. The biggest lesson from everything that happened with COVID is how dangerous it is to give the government power. Every time you give the government power, it never comes back, and it grows and grows and grows. That's what you see right now with the Department of Homeland Security, the Patriot Act, right? It was called the Patriot Act because you were a patriot. This was our patriotic duty, right? So we gave the government all this power. And now the Patriot Act is used against American citizens. So no, we shall never forget what you did, because it should never, ever be allowed to happen again. I just saw Charlie Crist today. Somebody asked him, he's going to, by the way, lose to Ron DeSantis by like 10 to 15 points. That race is going to be over in well, it's a big state, so it will take a little longer. It's going to be over in like 30, 40 minutes. No more than an hour. That race is going to be over. Charlie Crist is going to get his butt whooped. But he was out there saying he's open to mask mandates. With everything we now know, they did nothing to stop the spread. He's open to them. And she wants a pandemic insane. She wants us to forget what Anthony Fauci did? Absolutely not. Sorry, we're not going to forget. And we're going to hold you accountable. So that's the week's biggest L. Before we go and we get ready for a big night next week, I might do the show and go over some live results during the show. I'll decide. But if anyone watching has any questions, I see Steve Shelton posted the Steve, thank you for posting the comment, the link to the Intercept story. Like I said, you got to read that story from the Intercept. It's freaking mind blowing. It should scare you. Actually, scared me. I couldn't believe it. I'm reading through it and I'm like, this stuff is nuts. But if anyone has any questions before we go, I'd love to take some questions. One of my favorite parts is getting it, see what's on your guys' mind and being able to try and address it. So if you guys got anything you want to ask me, fire away. I would, I'm here to answer. Oh, comments are disabled on YouTube. I did not know that. That explains. Let me see. Everything goes wrong when you're trying to do that. That explains why I wasn't getting any love from YouTube. I did not know the comments were disabled. Should be privacy public. I will have to check in on that. We are also on Rumble. We are also on Getter and live on Twitter. I will try and fix that for next time. So usually the YouTube comments work, so I'm a little surprised that they're not. I'm going to go over to YouTube, check it out quick. But other than that, if we don't have any questions, they're not. I'm going to go over to YouTube, check it out quick. But other Oh yeah, comments disabled for the live stream. Interesting. Let me check my settings. All right, I will have to fix that for the next one. Not sure why that was the case. They're never disabled, so I'm a little annoyed that that was done this way. But I appreciate you guys. Listen, get some rest. Next week's going to be fun. Democrats going to get wiped out completely, and they only have themselves to blame. So I appreciate you guys. I will see you next week. Well, I'll decide. I'll let you know. Might go over some results just do that. We'll go a little results show. But I appreciate everything, and we will see you next week.
What's the song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody at going to my mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are we talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are we? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I? No idea. Last night on the television, I was on a telephone rapidly rising and with I don't know. COVID has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's lives reflected in the NHEI. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to we're going to seize the ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy. Yeah. NATO's purpose is to defend against aggression. Let me make that near and dear to you that you like to be able to. Anyway, my mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are we? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I? No idea. I don't think as the idea that the political coverage of I want to thank and recognize Dr. John Kingerson. That song. I can't get this to function at all. My mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are we? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I? No idea. No idea. No idea. No idea. What's the song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody at going to my mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember.